Thank you very much. My name is Aaron Stark. This is my story. I apologize, trigger warning if anybody is sensitive. This gets really intense and really deep. If anybody has got sensitive feelings, now's your chance to not listen. I was almost a school shooter. In 1996, in Denver, Colorado, as a student in North High School, I almost committed a terrible atrocity. I learned early on in life that there's a strange comfort and calmness in darkness. That no matter how chaotic and how painful the situation may seem, it can become your normal. It can seem to be like your everyday. And that can be a very, very damaging thing. I had a very chaotic and violent childhood growing up. From my birth dad, who was epically violent, to what we used to call it movie of the week level violence, where I would see things routinely like my mom getting beaten and raped in front of me and then getting beaten with a tire iron afterwards. Have him standing there laughing over me. Have me being kidnapped from my mom and then taken across the country and being told that I was dead and that she would have to fight to get me back. It's terrible, horrible things. Some stuff that a normal 3-year-old and 4-year-old should never have to go through. Then as I grew up, I had a stepdad who was extremely alcoholic and drug addict. So I went from having to fight for my life every day to watching them rock up crack rock and learn how to sell it to the people nearby, or how to lie and steal to get everything I want. I was being taught all the ways to deal with the world, but I was being taught entirely the wrong ways. I was being taught things like, if I see something that I want, I can fight for it, or I can steal for it. I can go ahead and punch somebody if I'm mad at them. I can make up a completely different story than anyone could ever believe, just to get my way and get whatever I wanted to. It didn't matter if I was lying to anybody. None of it really mattered. I embraced darkness really early on. I was told I was worthless constantly. With all the different schools I went to, we always seemed to have bullies. I went to 40 or 50 different schools growing up. With my parents being criminal drug addicts, we would constantly be woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning with a pound on the door saying, grab all your stuff, we need to get out of here, we need to get across the country right now before the cops get here. So we'd all jump in the car, drive all the way across up to Oregon, and then have it all, the whole thing happen again a month later. I would never be at the same place more than a month. I never had clean clothes, I never ate well, I never smelled good, I never had a stable anything, really. Didn't have any place that would be mine. Never had any privacy. And when you're at a new school every month, but you don't smell good, one constant is there's always a new set of bullies. They got really inventive with the things they would do. They'd walk up to me and mind like they're going to shoot me with a harpoon like I'm some kind of whale. Come up and drop food on my head because I was too fat. Walk around and call me Pugsley Adams. Made fun of me because I read comic books back before superheroes were cool. No one liked them back in those days, so they made fun of me constantly for that. I was smart. I was fat. I read a lot of books. So I got picked on constantly. But honestly, the bullying at school paled in comparison to what was happening at home. Getting told you're worthless all the time is such a damaging thing. If you tell someone you're worthless enough, they will believe it. And then they're going to do everything they can to make everyone else agree with it too. And so I did. I lived in complete filth. My room would be so filthy I wouldn't know where to step, because that's just the way that I thought it would have to be. In the life, there's good people and bad people. I was told from really early on that I was one of the bad people, so I was just going to do exactly what I was supposed to do. The abuse and pain just never seemed to stop. I got into cutting early on, about 14 or 15 years old. With all this chaos and violence going on in my life, I didn't really have much I could control. Didn't really have much emotion that was mine. But I discovered that if I dug the razor blade into my skin and ripped it open, that was some form of pain that I could control. Something that I could know that was mine. Something that no one else could experience but me. One little bit of normal in the tornado of hell that I was living in. And it's really strange that something as painful and as damaging as slicing your arm open can seem peaceful and calming when there's nothing else in your world that's normal. 14, 15 years old, I was homeless by this point, living in my friend's shed. I had already pushed away most of my friends from either stealing from them or lying to them or trying to be aggressive and acting like I'm going to beat them up, or however it was. I shoved away most of my friends. I was living in one of the few friends I had left. I was living in his shed in the back of his yard. I had long ago left my own house. I got tired of beating up my stepdad for beating up my mom. So I got tired, I couldn't live with that violence anymore. And I couldn't sleep on the streets anymore. So I found myself in this shed, sitting in this gray, dingy chair, with the roof wide open, rain pouring down on top of me, my arm covered in blood, and I'm dripping it on the floor. And I think, I need to do something, or I'm going to die. I'm going to end up killing myself. So I did the only thing I could think of to do. I grabbed a phone book and I called social services. Set up an appointment to go over the next couple of days to go up to social services. I got some bus fare from my friend's mom. The next day I drove up to the office, and as I got there, sadly I wasn't the only one that they invited into the meeting. They also called my mom into that same meeting too. And even though when they asked me what the problem was, I pulled out a bloody razor blade and I threw it on the table and I said, that's the problem. They didn't listen to me. They sent me home with her. And as we went home, she turned to me and she said, next time you should do a better job and I'll buy you the razor blades. My heart just got ripped out of me then. All that darkness that I've been looking at for so long, I just ran headlong into it. I'm going to be the evil one. I'm going to be the disgusting one. You think I'm terrible? Fuck you. You don't know what terrible is. I'm going to show you. So I was that. Not only was I being harmful to myself, I was manipulating kids all around me to be groups of kids to steal and rob for me to do what I wanted to do. I wasn't the goth kid. I was the one that told all the goth kids what to do. Because I knew different ways to manipulate. I knew that no matter how much they hurt, I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I was worthless anyway. My life was going to be nothing. Might as well bring everybody else down with me. But I didn't want to die. A couple weeks later, I'm at that state again where I'm at the bottom. I knew all the others' cries for help had fallen on deaf ears. I tried to make an appointment already, and then by the time I got there, they called my mom. I can't set an appointment this time. I just got to go show up somewhere. They can't know I'm going to go. They can't know I'm going to be there. Across the street from my school, there was a place that said mental health on the sign. I didn't know if there was a doctor there. I didn't know what it was for. I just knew it said mental health. So I went there to try to get some help. I go in there and talk to a social worker. A small 23 or 24-year-old girl comes out and she's helping me. As this smart kid always wanted to read books, I took a big fascination into psychology. So I knew, I read all the textbooks that she had read, or supposedly had read. But she was new at her job. She didn't really know what to do. And I had been taught from my family lifetimes worth of how to manipulate the situation, how to get the social worker to listen to exactly what you say. So she sent me home too. And as I walked out of there, my last gasp of hope, not listening to me and sending me back out into the nothing. I lost everything. That was it. I was at the bottom. And I discovered something really strange then. When you're at your absolute worst, it gets really quiet. It gets really calm. There's nothing left to hurt. There's no more emotion left to get. There's nothing left for you to feel anymore. I knew I felt like I was being ignored. No one had ever heard me. I'd screamed out into the void so many times, nothing had ever worked. So that was it. They were going to hear me this time. They were going to listen. Somehow, I was going to make them listen to me. And the only way I could think of doing that was to hurt a lot of people in a short amount of time. I knew some gangbangers that were hanging out by the school nearby. They had always seen me at the school. I wasn't really in class. I was always just at the school hanging out. And they had sold drugs to my family. They knew me from around, so they knew I wasn't some kind of narc. They knew I was safe. So I knew them on a very first name basis. I go up to them. I knew they had access to guns. They had spoken about it before. A couple of them had brought guns to school in the past. I knew they had access to it. I go up to them and say, hey, can you give me a gun? Hopefully one that can shoot a whole lot of bullets. And they say, yeah, sure, no problem. Give me an ounce. I said, all right, give me 3 days. And that was it. I was going to get a gun. I was going to kill a lot of people. Either at a mall, food court, or at a school. It didn't really matter to me which one it was. It wasn't about the people. It didn't really care. It wasn't about them as the victims. It could have been anybody. I just wanted to pick the places with the most amount of people, do the most amount of damage in the least amount of time. And people nowadays will say, well, isn't that an argument that we should arm schools and we should harden the security and we should put armed guards everywhere? That wouldn't have stopped me in the slightest. And matter of fact, it didn't. My school had an armed guard stationed into it. Had an armed, uniformed police officer right at the front door. Didn't even put a blip in my planning. Wouldn't have been a spot. Because I wasn't planning on making it out. I was going to kill the first people I saw, and then I was going to die. And when someone's planning like that, no amount of security you put in there is going to stop that explosion from happening. Thankfully, though, I wasn't alone in that darkness. That friend who had been sleeping in his shed, he saw me there, and he didn't let me go. Instead of seeing me slide down that path of darkness, he brought me inside instead, and started showing me kindness. And not that overbearing kind of kindness, the kind where it's like, is there something I can do to make you feel better? Is there a program I can get you in? Is there something I can do to help? What's wrong with you? He just sat me down and gave me a meal and said, hey, you want to watch a movie? Treat me like it was a Tuesday. Treat me like I was a person. When you're treated like you're a person, when you don't even feel like you're human, it can change your entire world. And it did to me. His act of kindness made me stop that tragedy. I didn't end up getting the gun. I didn't end up committing the tragedy. Instead, I ended up trying to work through my own issues. If you see someone in that spot who you think needs that love, give it to them. A simple smile, a look, a gesture can literally save lives. You never know what your act of kindness might do to help someone else. You never know what that state they might be in. But we're in a really dangerous spot right now. We're going to arm the teachers, and we're going to look for that kid who might be a threat, and turn him into the FBI, and make sure that we watch out for anybody that might be a danger. What's going to happen to a kid who's going to be in the position that I was in 25 years ago, who's hurting and alone and abused, and is in that spot, and instead of being looked at like they possibly could be a friend, they're looked at like they're a threat. And instead of being shown that they're a person, they're shown that they get turned to the FBI, and that one moment of pain gets turned into a lifetime of legal trouble because one person thought they were a problem. Instead, we need to give love to people who we think deserve it the least because they need it the most. It'll help them just as much as it helps us. This whole civil war that we got through, and we have to know that we can see the person on the other side of us, whether it's a Republican and you're a Democrat, whether it's a Christian and you're an atheist, whatever it is, the other side isn't a monster. They're just a person. We have to look at each other like we're just people. See past all these barriers that we put up for ourselves that just cause so much hatred and anger in the world. Let kindness be the ones that stop it. Give love to the people you think deserve it the least. Thank you. So, that first part, I wrote as a Facebook post right after Parkland. I was just a stay-at-home dad. Okay? I would just stay at home, play with my kids. I'm a father of 4. I have 3 daughters and a son. My daughter and my wife were asking each other, how could someone ever get to that point? How could someone feel like they wanted to kill a whole lot of people? Sadly, I understood. So I wrote a Facebook post about it, just a simple Facebook post. That ended up getting out and going a bit viral. Got the attention of my local news. Kyle Clark came and did a video on it. That got 16 million views. All of a sudden, I got offered to do a Washington Post article. Last month, I did my own TED Talk on this topic. I'm hopefully going to go speak at schools about it. I'm not saying any of this to brag. This isn't me saying, oh, cool, look at what I've done. This is my normal. This has been my life for my whole existence. I'm not afraid to talk about my past. I'm not ashamed of anything that I've done. And if I can inspire people, over the course of this, after me talking about it, I've received over 20,000 messages, people all over the globe, of sharing their own personal stories of pain. A guy in Pakistan who was getting abused by people, and he couldn't talk about his bullying because it literally could kill him. But he felt like he could tell me about it. He showed me this big 8-paragraph long thing. I've gotten contacted from just this afternoon before this set, in between my first set and second set, I got a message from one of the students at Stoneman Douglas from Parkland, who was a junior in the school, saying that he saw my TED Talk, and it gave him a little bit of hope, and to please continue. If I could talk about this, and it could give them some kind of hope, and make people bring out their stories, what could you bring out? If you're afraid of the truth, and you're afraid of your past, and you have some kind of dark history that might, to you, it's hurtful, it might help someone else more than you'll ever realize. So please, speak your truth. Be honest, because you never know what impact you might make. I never in my life expected that somehow me talking about the darkest times in my life could ever show anybody else that there's some form of light out there. But if it is, I'm going to keep on going. Because there's nothing more. The only free thing we got in this world is kindness. It doesn't cost anything. And if it's going to help, we have to keep going. So, thank you. I'll do a little Q&A if anybody has any questions or comments.
When you were in the shed,
Mhm.
and your friend invited you in, how old were you?
I was right between 15 and 16.
You were 16. And do you mind saying what your age is now?
I'm 39.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, this was in 1996.
Wow. Right.
1996, 1997, right about that. I wasn't watching a calendar, so it's really hard to piece the exact time frame. Because, you know,
So a lot of years have.
a lot of years, and it
Yeah.
took 15 years of hard dedication and work to recover. It's not some switch you can flip off.
Right.
They showed me kindness and it stopped me from that time. But even just a couple years later, I was back in that same spot where I'm desperate and alone and tried to reach out to my family, and they shutting me down again, so I'm homeless and alone again. And this time, and just to share another really cool story, this time, it's my birthday. I'm going to turn 20 years old. Okay, I'm extremely depressed. My family had just kicked me out literally that afternoon, screaming that I'm a worthless piece of shit and I should be dead. So I leave on my 20th birthday thinking that I am going to be dead. I got a whole bunch of drugs and I was going to overdose. I was not planning on making out of that night. All right. My friend, Mike, the one I talked about in that first story, we had a group of other friends. We would all get together sometimes. Okay. And he told me, well, we're going to go over to Amber's house. We're going to have a little get together tonight. Nothing big. We're just going to go sit down for a little while and talk. Okay. I expected it to just be part of my normal night. Go sit down for a little while, go home to myself in my house, and then do what I have to do. I show up at her house, and it's a birthday surprise party for me. And there's a whole house full of people, and they baked a brand new blueberry peach pie just for me. And everybody's around there just to have a party for me. And instead of going home and killing myself, I sit there with my friends and have this wonderful party, spend the night, take a shower, be around people I love. She saved my life with kindness and pie. She was at the first show earlier this evening. So the friends, they're still in my life. It's still my world. And this other side of the struggle is still going on too. The day I got approved for my TED Talk, that same afternoon, I got a screaming call from my mom saying I'm a worthless piece of shit. Had to block her and my grandma on Facebook. Haven't spoken to him since. So,
When was that first TED Talk?
June 3rd,
Of
up in
this
Boulder, TEDx Boulder.
year? In this year?
Yeah,
I mean,
just
like
last month.
4 weeks ago or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Cool.
Any other questions, comments, anything?
Just
All right.
to your point of the only thing that's free is kindness. The other thing to think about would be the only thing that we absolutely have control over is our attitude,
Yep.
or how we react to situations. So there's always some sort of light in the darkness
There
that we
is.
can find, whether
Yeah.
we actually see it or we actually probably have to seek it out more at certain times. But there is always some sort of something to be happy about, something to be grateful for.
There is. What I tell my children all the time is the only constant in this world is change.
Correct.
The only thing that's absolutely certain is tomorrow's going to be different than today, and the day after is going to be different than that day.
Yeah.
And if you just keep on moving forward, then eventually you're going to be running. So, yeah, that's how I tell my children. And just so you know, I've learned a lot from my parents. It was a horrible time growing up. It wasn't always all bad. There were good times too. But I learned a lot from my parents, mostly what not to do. And my prized thing of my life now, my 17-year-old daughter, she tells everybody around that I'm her best friend.
Yep.
And when I was 17, I wouldn't speak to my parents. So I won.
Yeah.
You're an
There you go.
awesome dad. You're an awesome dad.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Good job.